everyone. I'm Sophie Newton, working at Nestlé Health Science in the Translation Research Group. I have no other conflict of interest, and I will talk to you about human milk oligosaccharides and food allergy. So after a quick introduction, I will discuss observational studies as well as preclinical data that support the role of HMOs in allergy. So as you know, breast milk is currently recommended for the prevention of the development of allergic disease in high-risk infants, but the underlying mechanisms are not fully understood yet. You also know that human breast milk contains various factors that can impact the immune development of the neonates, and as such could also have an impact in food allergy or allergy in general. However, breast milk have been inconsistently associated with allergic conditions, and this could reflect differences in human milk, which varies across different settings and populations. Among the different components that could have an impact on allergy, human milk oligosaccharides have been studied quite heavily during the last years and could contribute to the development of allergic disease. So as depicted before, HMO is an important component of breast milk, and HMO composition varies related to a different factor that are shown here, meaning that every infant will receive HMO composition and quantity that is specific to him or her. So based on the previously mentioned role of HMOs related the promotion of a bifidobacteria-dominated microbiome, the role in strengthening the gut barrier function and educating the developing immune system, there is a hypothesis that HMO can also have a role in the development of allergies. So I will start showing you a first observational studies that was done in Finland, and the authors looked at the quantity of food 2-dependent breast milk oligosaccharides in 266 mothers, and actually looked at associations with allergy in the infants. And as you can see here on this graph, there was an association found, either not significant, between food 2 plus milk and less IgE allergic disease and IgE eczema, but only at 2 years old and in C-section born infants. The hallmark of the food 2 plus milk is their component that they are composed of, or they comprises 2FL, and the variation, as you can see here, is quite high between the different milks of these food 2 plus mothers. So what they did is that they looked at the levels of 2FL, and actually, interestingly, they could see associations between the levels of the 2FL and the development of IgE allergic disease or IgE eczema still in this C-section born infants. So the higher the 2FL, the lower prevalence of allergic disease. In another Finnish cohort, this group looked at human oligosaccharides and the development of cow's milk allergy in infants, and they have seen a higher concentration of 4 different HMOs, here in red, in breast milk related to the lower risk of cow's milk protein allergy that was identified by a food challenge at 18 months of age. And the most striking differences was shown here on the right with the LNFP3, and they could also, as was done with 2FL in the previous cohort I described, they could show that the higher level of LNFP3, the lower risk of developing cow's milk allergy in infants. This cohort, I looked at 19 different and individual HMO as well as total HMO, and they could not see any association between any of these individual HMOs and food sensitization. But they have shown that the overall HMO profile differed between infants which has a food sensitization or infants who are not food sensitized. And they also could define kind of the overall HMO composition that was associated with no food sensitization, which contained so higher levels of 6 individual HMOs and lower levels of 4 different ones. Here, the last published cohort on the topic was from Australia, including 285 mothers, and it's a high allergy risk birth cohort, and it's the only one who looked at allergy later in life, so up to 18 years of age. And they could actually see associations between exposure to acidic Lewis milk and increased risk of allergic respiratory disease, here in red, and also some evidence for a reduced risk of food sensitization for the infants who were exposed to predominantly acidic HMO profiles. And they also mention similarities with SIPO and Sprenger publications. So the last one I wanted to share with you is this one from the Live Child cohort in Germany, where, so it's still unpublished data, but what we showed here is a nonlinear association between specific HMO levels and allergy, which is true for 2FL, LNN, and T, as well as an association of FUT3 gene polymorphisms and allergy in infants. And what is interesting is that these FUT3 gene polymorphisms leads to no 3FL in the milk, but higher levels of 2FL, which could be linked to what we saw on the left graph with the higher level of 2FL leading to potentially more allergy. And of course, this has to be confirmed in other cohorts. So as you saw, so there are some similarities, but also some discrepancies between the different association studies published. And this could be due to differences in study population, in analytical methods, in timing of HMO collection, and also in the outcomes that were looked at. Anyway, it seemed that there is an association between HMO composition and the development of allergy. And what is interesting as well is that sometimes it seems that the overall profile of HMO are more important than the quantity of the individual HMOs. Of course, further research is needed to better understand the topic, and typically the causality of these associations still remains to be determined. So there is no intervention study published yet, but some preclinical data that suggest a benefit of HMO supplementation for allergy prevention or decrease of symptoms, and that's why I will show you now. So the first study used food allergy model in mice using ovalbumin and IP sensitization. And they actually showed that on the left graph that supplementation of these mice with 2FL or 6SL could protect could decrease basically the symptoms of food allergy in this model. So these two lines here. They also looked at immune outcomes and showed that they have seen an increase in T regulatory cells as well as an indirect stabilization of mast cells, as it's shown on this right graph, that could explain this decrease in the symptoms. The second published data I wanted to share with you is this one, where the authors supplemented mice models with 3FSL, and they used two different atopic dermatitis models. In the one depicted here is induced by house dust mites. And you can see here that in a dose-dependent manner, the administration or the supplementation of 3FL could decrease the symptoms here in the ear of the mice. And you can see here the objective measure of the ear thickness, showing that you have less ear thickness after supplementation of 3SL. And they also shown this dose-dependent effect of 3SLs on mast cell numbers and on IgE production. So now I will drive you through unpublished data that we have obtained with 2FL-LNNT. And this basically the same mix of HMO that were just described in the clinical trial that Anna Novak just shared. So the first in vitro data here are on Th2 skewed PBMCs. So you see here that when we incubated the 2FL LNNT mix with the PBMCs, we observed a decrease in IL-5 production by these cells. The other in vitro model we used was mast cell degranulation. And here you see that when the mast cells were incubated with the 2FL LNNT mix, we observed a decrease of the degranulation. So suggesting stabilization of the mast cells. Regarding the potential role of HMOs on gut barrier, we also use this in vitro model using CACO2 and HT29NTX epithelial gut cells. And we used an inflammatory model, so TNF-alpha and interferon gamma was used to disrupt the gut barrier in vitro. We incubated the cells with HMO before the inflammation induction. And as you can see here on this graph, as compared to the control group, so it's here the C plus group, we could show that incubation of HMOs plus interferon and TNF, so within the inflammatory condition, could decrease the leakage of the gut barrier as compared when the cells were incubated only with the inflammatory markers, so showing a potential role of HMOs in protecting this gut barrier. Finally, we used two different mice models. The first one is mucosal sensitization mice models. And we use here an oral sensitization with ovalbumin plus cholera toxin, and supplemented the mice with the 2FL LNNT mix in their diet at different percentage and all along the study. And here you can see that this HMO intervention could reduce the sensitization of the mice on the left graph. And we looked at IgG1 anti-OVA antibodies. And on the right side, you see that we also could show that the supplementation of the mice with the 2FL LNNT mix could increase the regulatory T cells. We also looked at what's going on mast cells, and here you see the decrease of mast cell numbers in the intestine of these mice after supplementation with the HMO mix, as well as a decrease in degranulation of the mast cells based on the MCPT1 levels in the blood. And this could be, of course, related to the data we observed in vitro. We then used another mouse models, in which we used an epicutaneous sensitization with Aspergillus fumigatus. Here again, we tested the effect of a supplementation of HMO intervention with 2FL and LNNT at different doses, directly put in the diet all along the experiments. Here we could confirm the impacts of the two HMOs on sensitization. So in another way of sensitizing, we still see this effect of the 2FL LNNT with a reduction of the sensitization of the mice. We also, and I will not depict it here, but we also looked at mast cell degranulation, Tregs, and so on, and could confirm as well the effect of the two HMOs. What we also looked at in this model was if the 2FL LNNT mix had an effect on the microbiota composition. And here again, we saw dose-dependent effect of the supplementation of HMO2 on the microbiota composition, with the highest difference with 10%. But as you may have seen before, this is not the best condition to reduce sensitization and mast cell degranulation. So again here, and this can be linked to what was shown in the live child cohort, that we may need a good ratio or good quantity of 2FL or LNNT to get the right effects on allergy. So that's very interesting to see that in both human cohort and in vivo studies, we find the similar findings. So to finish with this, so here's the two examples of increased types of bacteria after this 2FL LNNT supplementation, Parabacteroides and Akkermansia. And very interestingly as well, we show that short-chain fatty acid production, and here we show the propionate, was increased by the supplementation of the mice with the HMOs. So in conclusion, we have seen that human observational studies suggest the role of HMOs in allergy. This is also suggested by preclinical models that has shown that supplementation of mice with HMO can impact allergy, sensitization, and symptoms. And interestingly as well, what we see is that we may have a potential explanation of how the HMO can act on allergy, sensitization, or symptoms, either through mast cells stabilization, microbiota composition modulation, but interestingly also through regulatory T cell modulation that could suggest an effect on or could explain the effect on the sensitization, but also suggest a potential role of HMO on tolerance induction. And finally, as previously mentioned, the next step would be now to have some human intervention studies to confirm the role of HMO supplementation in allergy management. And finally, I will close my talk by thanking the people who has worked and generated the data that I shared, the unpublished ones. So you have still their name here somewhere. And as well, I would like to thank the people we collaborated with at the University of Leipzig regarding the live child cohort work. And I thank you for your attention. And that's it.